It is easy to feel cynical about politics. It is also possible to have your faith restored in the most earnest possible way. Like, for example, the story of Olivia McConnell, who loves fossils and who knows how her state government works, and who wrote to her state legislator in South Carolina and explained that one of the first vertebrate fossils in the United States was discovered in her home state of South Carolina. And most states have a state fossil, but South Carolina didn't. And South Carolina should have a state fossil, and please would her family's state legislator try to make that happen. Signed, your friend, Olivia. And Olivia, age 8, thereby started the process of South Carolina choosing the woolly mammoth as its state fossil. That story got national attention and became, honestly, one of my favorite stories of the year last year, when a state senator in South Carolina decided that the idea of a fossil was just too much for his little brain. And he decided to stop that bill from passing by adding in whole sections from the book of Genesis into the bill's language, stating that, yeah, sure, South Carolina may have a woolly mammoth fossil, but that woolly mammoth was created on the 6th day with the other beasts of the field, and that must be in the law. Olivia's bill got waylaid for a long while with the Old Testament diversion, but Olivia stuck with it. She said she would stick with it forever until she was like 23 maybe, or maybe even until she was 40. But she did not have to stick with it until she was 40. South Carolina eventually came around, in part because of her perseverance, and South Carolina got its official state fossil. And Olivia says she wants to be a scientist, but now I would prefer her to be governor. This is the giant salamander. Cute. It's from Idaho. In 2012, an Idaho 4th grader wrote to her state legislator to see about getting the Idaho giant salamander designated as that state's state amphibian. That was 2012. She was in 4th grade. She got as far as the bill getting drafted, couldn't get a hearing. 2013, she tried again. Bill got printed, couldn't get a hearing. 2014, she tried again, got a hearing, still couldn't get it passed. This year, she went back at it again. This was actually her 5th time, her 5th trip to the legislative session in her state trying to get this thing passed. And when they brought it up in January, they voted it down. They voted no. Conservative legislators raised an objection. They said, well, if Idaho officially professes its love for this giant salamander, maybe it will get declared endangered or something, and then communism or whatever. The argument made absolutely no sense at all. There was no connection between picking a state amphibian and endangered species. But even though the argument made no sense, it still held the day. The only other argument that legislators articulated against the freaking salamander bill was that salamanders are gross and icky. Literally, that was their argument. Look at this. Look. Memories of a childhood aversion to salamanders led Representative Ken Andrus to oppose state legislation that would have made the Idaho giant salamander the state amphibian. Quote, when I grew up, when I was a young boy in our swimming hole, there were salamanders, and I learned to despise them. They were ugly, they were slimy, and they were creepy. And I've not gotten over that. She's now 14. She started this when she was in 4th grade. She's now 14. And today she started to win. Today. Her bill got through the Idaho House, even though the guy who said he couldn't vote for it because salamanders are ugly, he still voted no for that same reason. But Isla Hickman has stuck with it in Idaho from 4th grade. She's now 14. Another couple of years, she could have driven herself to meet with the state representatives blocking her bill, but she is now getting it done. This was the scene in Frankfort, Kentucky this morning. Look at that. Hundreds of students from across the state, along with parents and faculty and Kentucky state politicians, holding signs, giving speeches, everybody rallying at the state capitol in Kentucky, trying to save something called House Bill 236. It's a bill drafted by high school students. It would allow a student to be part of the search committee process for picking a superintendent of schools. Kentucky law currently blocks that. At the same time, a Republican state senator named C.B. Embry was working on something else. He was pushing a totally unrelated, very controversial bill that would mandate the use of specific bathrooms by students who are transgender. Also, a Republican state senator named Albert Robinson, he at the time was pushing a bill about religious objections to things and freedom of speech. But those two senators saw the high school kids' bill sailing through the House easily, and they thought, They attached their own super controversial going nowhere bills to the high school kids' bill, essentially torpedoing it. Not because they disagree with the high school kids' bill. In fact, one said he even likes the bill, but he said he wanted to send a message to the Democrats by killing the high school kids' dreams and their good idea with his idea that he couldn't get past any other way. Ignorant and craven state legislators all over the country are doing their best to make these kids lose their love of government and their belief that government can work for a constructive purpose. But those terrible legislators are up against what looks to be a pretty insurmountable tide of perseverance and constructive good cheer from kids who know that we can do better and who are insisting that we do. Joining us now are Eliza Jane Schaefer. She's a 16-year-old junior and a high school student who has been one of the students pushing for HB 236 in Kentucky, and her advisor, Rachel Bellin. Thanks to you both for being with us this evening. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah. Nice to be here.
Thanks for having me.
I am so blown away by the level of organization and the ability these students have had to mobilize not only other students, but the adult community as well. They have taken it upon themselves to do everything a high-level lobbying firm would do. And they're just doing this between their classes in school and their extracurricular activities and everything else they're supposed to do as volunteers. It was incredible today.
And what's it been like for you to see it get banged around the way it has in the legislative process?
Well, in my opinion, education is the single most important service that a government can provide for its people. So it's really important that we get it right. And these education policy decisions are made by administrators, government officials, parents, teachers, but surprisingly not students, who are the people who are in the system and living out the effects of these decisions every single day. So I think we have a really important perspective to offer. And so that's why I think that it is important that there be a student member on the superintendent screening committees. We are 100% of the superintendent's constituents, yet we have 0% representation on this committee. And it's definitely been a wake-up call to see what democracy really looks like in the real world. This is not exactly what I expected. There's been a bit of a learning curve.
Has it, I gotta say though, has it, forgive the phrase, but has it been a bummer? I mean, did you think that you would be more, you'd be taken more seriously sort of on the merits? Were you bummed out to see it get sort of diverted into all this stuff that had nothing to do with your bill?
I would say bummed out would be a good description of how I felt.